Nancy King, a 36-year-old single mother, had poured her heart into making her dad's 60th birthday unforgettable. For months, she'd been creating a photo album, a collection of old family pictures and handwritten notes, each memory carefully chosen to make him smile. Their suburban Cleveland home was alive with the laughter of family and friends. Clutching the gift, her chest tight with anticipation, she waited for the moment her dad would open it in front of everyone. But just as she set the album down on the table, a sharp ripping sound cut through the chatter. Her heart sank. She spun around and froze. Her brother Stephen stood over a trash can, the album shredded at his feet. "Oops! Just an accident," he sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. A few relatives burst out laughing, and her mother rushed to defend him. "Oh, come on. Don't make a fuss. He didn't mean it." Nancy stood there, fists clenched, nails digging into her palms, her face burning hot. The room fell silent except for the snickers of a few onlookers, and her father's face bewildered and hurt. No one spoke up for her. She swallowed the lump in her throat, grabbed her bag, and walked out without a word, vowing this would not be the end of it. That moment wasn't just about a ruined gift. It sparked a chain of events that would turn their family upside down. She had no idea how far her brother's betrayal would go, or how fiercely she would fight back. "Before I go on, I want to ask you something. What time is it where you're watching this? And what city are you in? I'd love to know where in the world you're listening to my story from, to understand how everything fell apart." Let me take you back to my family. Growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, I always felt like I was playing second fiddle in the King household. My parents, William and Francis, never missed a chance to praise my brother Stephen for every deal he closed as a rising star in marketing. His name was always on their lips. Stephen this, Stephen that, his latest campaign or high-profile client dinner, stealing the spotlight at every family gathering. I told myself I didn't mind. I was busy enough as a single mom, working long hours at the bank, building a life I could be proud of. But deep down, I wanted just one moment to shine, to show Dad that I could make him proud too. That moment was supposed to be his 60th birthday. I spent months crafting a photo album, a tribute to his life. I dug through attics and old boxes for family photos, Dad as a young man, our childhood camping trips, Mom's faded Polaroids. Each picture was a memory I carefully restored and paired with handwritten notes, telling the stories behind them. I spent over $300 on custom binding archival paper and a leather cover, pouring my heart into every detail. It wasn't just a gift, it was a piece of our family's history, meant to make Dad smile the way he hadn't in years. And when the day of the party arrived, our Cleveland home was filled with guests and laughter right before everything fell apart. Dad was in high spirits, laughing with old friends, his eyes crinkling the way they did when he was truly happy. I caught a glimpse of Stephen across the room, his posture stiff, his smile forced. His fiancée, Diane Porter, stood nearby, chatting politely but glancing at him with a furrowed brow. I should have known something was off, but I was too focused on the moment, on handing Dad that album, on seeing his reaction. I set the album on the gift table, my fingers lingering on the leather cover, imagining Dad flipping through it. Later, the party hummed along with guests toasting Dad's milestone. I was chatting with a cousin when a sharp, unmistakable sound cut through the noise, paper tearing. It felt like a knife through my chest. My heart sank. I pushed through the crowd, my eyes darting to the gift table. It was empty. I spun around, searching until I saw the trash can in the corner, its lid slightly ajar. My legs moved before my brain caught up. There it was, my album. Its pages ripped, photos crumpled, the leather cover slashed. Ink from my notes smeared across torn memories. My throat tightened and a wave of betrayal washed over me. I looked up, and Stephen was there, leaning against the wall, his eyes cold. He didn't say a word, but his smirk said enough. I wanted to demand answers, to scream at him for destroying something so personal, but the weight of Dad's laughter nearby stopped me. I couldn't ruin his day. Not like this. I stood there staring at the wreckage of my gift, my hands trembling. This wasn't just about an album. It was about Steven's need to tear me down to keep me in his shadow. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the spark that would unravel our family, exposing truths we'd all ignored for too long. Right there at the party, I knew I had to confront Steven. My pulse was racing, the torn pages of my album burning in my mind. I weaved through the crowd, my eyes locked on him as he lounged against the wall, sipping a drink like nothing had happened. "Steven," I said, my voice low but sharp. "Why did you destroy my gift?" He didn't even flinch. A slow, mocking grin spread across his face. "Oh, that old thing? Just an accident," he said, his tone so smug it made my skin crawl. No apology, no remorse, just that infuriating smirk daring me to push further. I stood there, fists balled, wanting to shout to make him admit what he'd done. But the chatter of guests and Dad's laughter nearby held me back. I wasn't going to let Steven turn this into a spectacle. I grabbed my coat and slipped out the front door, my breath shaky in the cool Cleveland night. I needed to get away to keep my cool before I said something I'd regret in front of Dad. The image of those crumpled photos, my handwritten notes smeared with ink, kept flashing in my head. I'd poured my heart into that gift, and Steven had treated it like garbage. Worse, he enjoyed it. I drove home, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, replaying his words. How could my own brother do this? What had I ever done to him? Later that evening, my best friend Carol Harris showed up at my doorstep. She'd been at the party and saw me leave. "Nancy, what happened back there?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. I let it all spill out, the album, Steven's sneer, the way he dismissed it as nothing. Carol sat with me on the couch, her presence steadying me as I vented my anger and hurt. "He's always been like this," I said, my voice cracking. "Always needing to be the center of attention, always putting me down." Carol nodded, her eyes full of understanding. "You don't deserve this," she said. "You put so much love into that gift and he stomped all over it." Her words didn't erase the pain, but they helped me breathe a little easier, grounding me when I felt like I was falling apart. I thought the worst was over, until my phone buzzed. A text from Steven. My stomach tightened as I opened it. "Nice try with that scrapbook, sis. Too bad it ended up where it belongs," it read, followed by a winking emoji. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. He wasn't just being cruel, he was enjoying it. I wanted to fire back, to tell him exactly what I thought of him, but I stopped myself. Replying would only give him what he wanted, a reaction, another fight. Instead, I tossed my phone onto the couch, my hands trembling with anger. Carol caught the look on my face and picked up the phone. Her jaw dropped as she read the message. "He's unbelievable," she muttered. "Nancy, you can't let him get away with this." She was right. Steven's text wasn't just a taunt, it was a challenge. A reminder that he thought he could walk all over me and suffer no consequences. For years, I'd brushed off his digs, telling myself, that's just Steven being Steven. But this was different. This wasn't about a ruined gift. It was about him trying to erase me, to make sure I stayed small, invisible, tucked behind his shadow. I paced the living room, Carol watching quietly, giving me space to think. "I'm not going to let him win," I said, finally, my voice steady for the first time that night. "Not this time." When Carol left, promising to check in tomorrow, I sat alone, staring at the ceiling. Steven's cruelty wasn't random, it was a pattern, his way of keeping control. I didn't know how I'd make him face the consequences, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't stay silent anymore. That night, lying in bed, my thoughts spun in endless circles. Why did Steven hate me so much? Was it jealousy, spite, or something deeper? I thought about Dad, how happy he'd been before everything went wrong, and I knew I couldn't let Steven destroy that memory. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had resolve. I was done letting my brother walk all over me. 2 days later, I made a decision that would change everything. Months earlier, I'd done something generous. I paid a $2,000 deposit for Steven's wedding venue, a stylish Italian restaurant in downtown Cleveland, as a gift to him and Diane. It had been my way of showing goodwill despite his constant need to outshine me. But after what he'd done, after he mocked me for caring, I was done playing nice. I picked up the phone and called the restaurant. "I'm canceling the deposit for Stephen King's wedding," I told the manager, my voice calm and firm. "Refund it to my account." There was a pause on the line before the manager confirmed it would be processed. When I hung up, I felt a strange, quiet relief, like I'd finally taken back a piece of myself. Stephen didn't deserve my kindness. Not anymore. By that afternoon, my phone was blowing up with notifications. Stephen had taken to Facebook, posting a long rant about how I was sabotaging his happiness, accusing me of being jealous and petty. "My sister can't stand to see me thrive," he wrote, painting himself as the victim. My inbox filled with messages from distant relatives and family friends, some curious, others outright accusing me of stirring drama. I scrolled through the comments, my chest tightening. Stephen had twisted everything, making it seem like I was the one tearing our family apart. I wanted to fire back to expose his cruelty, but I knew that would only feed his narrative. Instead, I shut off my phone and tried to focus on work, but the sting of his words lingered. The next morning, Mom showed up at my house unannounced. Frances stood in my living room, her arms crossed, her face a mix of disappointment and frustration. "Nancy, why would you cancel Stephen's wedding deposit?" she asked, her tone sharp. "You know how important this is to him. You're causing so much trouble for no reason." I stared at her, stunned. I'd expected her to understand, to see how Stephen had hurt me. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice calm. "He destroyed the album I made for Dad. He mocked me for it. Why should I keep supporting him?" She shook her head, brushing off my words. "You're being selfish?" she said. "You could have talked to him instead of escalating things." I felt my throat tighten, the unfairness of it all hitting me hard. Mom had always favored Stephen, but hearing her defend him now, after everything, cut deeper than I expected. She left without another word, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That evening, my phone rang. It was Diane. I braced myself, expecting another lecture, but her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Nancy, I owe you an apology," she said. I froze, caught off guard. Diane explained that she'd been at the party and seen Stephen's behavior, the way he'd laughed off ruining my gift, his arrogant dismissal when I confronted him. "I thought I knew him," she said, her voice heavy. "But that night, and the way he's been acting since, it's like I'm seeing the real Stephen. He's so selfish, so full of himself. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." I sat down, my heart racing. Diane's words were a lifeline, a validation of everything I'd been feeling. "You don't have to apologize," I told her. "I'm just glad you see him for who he is." She sighed, promising to call again soon. Diane's call shifted something in me. For the first time in days, I felt like I wasn't alone in this fight. Stephen's actions weren't just hurting me. They were starting to unravel his own life. I didn't know what Diane would do next, but her words gave me a spark of hope. I wasn't going to let Stephen's lies on social media or Mom's accusations break me. I'd made my stand by canceling that deposit, and I wasn't backing down. As I sat in my quiet house, I realized this was bigger than a ruined gift or a family argument. It was about standing up for myself, about refusing to let Stephen's spite define me. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew one thing: I was ready to fight back, whatever it took. A week later, the consequences hit hard. I was at my kitchen table sipping coffee when Diane called again. Her voice was firm, almost cold. "Nancy, I've canceled the wedding," she said. "I'm done with Stephen." My jaw dropped. She explained she'd gone back to the Italian restaurant in downtown Cleveland and withdrawn the deposit, my $2,000, which she promised would be returned to me soon. "It's not just about the money," she said. The way he trashed your album, the way he brushed it off with that arrogant smirk, it showed me who he really is. I can't marry someone so selfish. I listened, my heart pounding, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over me. Diane's decision was a bombshell, a crack in Stephen's carefully crafted image. I thanked her, my voice shaky, and hung up, still processing the news. Stephen's world was unraveling, and I hadn't even lifted a finger this time. That afternoon, my phone rang again. It was Dad. His tone was heavy and accusing. "Nancy, did you talk Diane out of the wedding?" he demanded. I froze, stunned by the question. "Dad, no," I said, my voice cracking. "I didn't do anything." Diane saw Stephen's true colors herself. But he wasn't convinced. "You canceled that deposit and now the wedding's off," he said. "You've gone too far this time." My chest tightened. His words cut deeper than Mom's had. I tried to explain about the album, Stephen's cruelty, Diane's call, but Dad interrupted, insisting I was stirring up trouble. "You need to fix this," he said, before hanging up. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. My own father thought I was the villain, and Stephen was getting away with everything. I couldn't let this go on. Stephen's lies on Facebook were still spreading, painting me as the jealous sister out to ruin his life. I needed help to shut it down. That's when I reached out to Cynthia Burke, a lawyer recommended by a coworker. I met her at her office in Cleveland, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. I laid out everything: Stephen's destruction of my gift, his mocking text, his social media rants. Cynthia listened, jotting notes, her expression unreadable. "This isn't just about rumors," she said when I finished. "It's defamation. We can send a cease and desist letter to make him stop." I nodded, feeling a spark of control for the first time in weeks. "Do it," I said. "I want him to know I'm not backing down." As we dug deeper, Cynthia dropped another bombshell. She'd done some research and found that Stephen had a history of selfish behavior, stories from former co-workers about him taking credit for their work. Even an old college friend who'd cut contact after he'd betrayed their trust. "Diane called me yesterday," Cynthia added. "She's completely done with him. Apparently his attitude after the party, bragging about how he'd handled you, was the final straw." I leaned back in my chair, stunned. Stephen's arrogance wasn't just hurting me. It had cost him his fiancée, his reputation, everything. Cynthia's words were a strange comfort, proof that I wasn't imagining his cruelty. "What's next?" I asked. She outlined a plan, a formal letter to Stephen demanding he remove the posts and stop spreading lies, with legal action as a backup if he didn't comply. Driving home, I was overwhelmed by a swirl of emotions: anger at Dad for blaming me, relief that Diane had finally seen the truth, and a fierce determination to fight back. Stephen's cruelty had pushed me to the edge, but in doing so, he'd also driven others away from him. Diane's decision to call off the wedding wasn't my doing yet. It felt like justice finding its way. Still, Dad's call haunted me. I wanted him to understand, to see Stephen for who he really was. But I didn't know how to make that happen without breaking his heart even more. For now, I had Cynthia in my corner, and that was enough to keep me moving forward. Stephen had crossed a line, and I was ready to draw one of my own, no matter what it took. A month later, I made up my mind to give Dad something that truly mattered. The sting of Stephen's betrayal and Dad's accusations still lingered, but I refused to let those moments define us. I decided to salvage what was left of the photo album I'd made for his 60th birthday. The torn pages and crumpled photos were painful reminders of that awful night, but I spent weeks bringing them back to life, reprinting the photos, taping the ripped edges, rewriting the notes by hand. The leather cover was beyond saving, so I replaced it with a simple, clean binding, focusing instead on the memories within. I wanted this to be more than a gift. I wanted it to be a gesture of love and resilience, proof that our family's story meant more than one cruel act. My plan was to host a small photo exhibition at Cuyahoga Valley National Park, a place Dad had always loved for its quiet trails and open skies. It felt right, peaceful, honest, unpretentious. I couldn't pull it off alone, so I called Carol. She didn't hesitate. "This is going to be perfect for your dad," she said, her voice full of warmth as we sat at my kitchen table sorting through stacks of photos. Carol took charge of the logistics, booking the park's community center, arranging tables, printing large format photos for display. Her organizational skills kept my vision on track. She didn't ask how I was coping or offer advice. She just helped make it happen, and that was exactly what I needed. We worked late into the night, ensuring every photo told its own story. Dad's fishing trips, our childhood summers, Mom and Dad's wedding day. Each one felt like a small step toward healing. When the day of the exhibition finally arrived, I stood inside the community center, my heart racing, as guests began to stream in: family, friends, neighbors, and a few of Dad's old colleagues. I'd invited Mom and Dad, but they hadn't responded, and I wasn't sure if they'd come. The room filled with gentle conversation as people wandered among the displays, smiling and swapping memories. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Diane. "Nancy, this is beautiful. I'm so impressed by what you've done for your dad. Thank you for reminding me what family can be." Her words stopped me cold. A wave of warmth spread through my chest. Diane's message wasn't just kind, it was a quiet acknowledgement of everything we'd both endured because of Stephen. I typed back a quick thank you, my heart lighter than it had felt in months. Diane had seen the worst of my brother, yet she still chose compassion. And somehow, that made all the difference. Halfway through the event, I saw Dad walk in, his face unreadable. Mom was beside him, her expression softer than the last time we'd spoken. I held my breath as Dad moved from photo to photo, his fingers tracing the edges of images I'd painstakingly restored. His eyes lingered on a picture of us fishing when I was 10, his smile so wide it made my throat tighten. When he reached the end of the display, he turned to me, his eyes misty. "Nancy," he said, his voice low and rough. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have blamed you for what happened with Stephen." He paused, swallowing hard. This means everything to me. I'm so sorry." I stepped forward, wrapping my arms around him, tears stinging my eyes. "It's okay, Dad," I whispered. "I just wanted you to have this." We stood there holding on to each other, the weight of the past weeks lifting just a little. Mom joined us, her hand resting on my shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of her own regrets. The exhibition wasn't just about the photos. It was about rebuilding what Stephen had tried to break. As guests shared memories with Dad, laughing over old stories, I saw him light up in a way I hadn't seen since before the party. Carol caught my eye from across the room, giving me a thumbs up, her grin wide. The day wasn't perfect. Stephen's absence was a quiet reminder of the rift, but it was enough. Dad's apology, Diane's message, the photos that held our history. They were proof that love could outlast spite. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be, standing beside Dad, surrounded by the family we'd chosen to keep. 2 months after the party, Stephen tried to reach out. I was sorting through paperwork at my kitchen table when an envelope arrived, his handwriting unmistakable on the front. My stomach twisted, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a letter, his words neat and deliberate. "Nancy," it began, "I owe you an apology. I was jealous of your independence, the way your friends and coworkers respect you. It got under my skin. I shouldn't have destroyed your gift. I'm sorry." I read it twice, searching for sincerity, but all I could see was his smirk from that night, the way he'd called it an accident, without remorse. The letter felt like a performance, a last-ditch effort to save face after his life had unraveled. I folded it up, my hands steady, and set it aside. I wasn't ready to forgive, not after everything he'd done. I decided then and there to cut contact to protect the boundaries I'd fought so hard to build. That choice wasn't easy, but it felt right. Stephen's jealousy had driven a wedge between us long before the party, and his letter only confirmed what I'd suspected. He'd resented me for years, not for anything I'd done, but for who I was. I didn't owe him a response or a second chance. I tucked the letter into a drawer, a reminder of why I needed to stay firm. My focus was on moving forward, not reopening old wounds. I'd spent too long letting his actions weigh me down, and I wasn't going back to that. A few days later, Mom came over, her face softer than I'd seen in months. Frances sat across from me at my dining table, her hands fidgeting with a coffee mug. "Nancy," she said quietly, "I've been wrong about a lot of things." Her voice wavered as she admitted she'd favored Stephen, always praising his career while overlooking my efforts. "I saw him as the one who needed lifting up," she said. "But I didn't see how it hurt you. I'm going to do better." Her words caught me off guard, stirring a mix of relief and pain. I'd waited years to hear her say that, but it still ached to know how long it had taken. "Mom," I said, reaching for her hand. "I just want us to be honest with each other." She nodded, her eyes misty, promising to try. It wasn't a full fix, but it was a start, a crack in the wall we'd built between us. Then came news from Cynthia. I met her at her office, the same one where we'd planned to tackle Stephen's lies. She leaned back in her chair, a faint smile on her face. "It's done," she said. "Stephen's taken down his posts, and he's been warned about further consequences." Her cease and desist letter had worked. Stephen had backed off, no longer spreading rumors about me online. Cynthia's efficiency was a lifeline, proof that standing up to him had been worth it. "You've got a strong case if he tries anything else," she added, her tone confident. I thanked her, feeling a weight lift. The rumors that had haunted me, calling me jealous and petty, were finally silenced. It wasn't just about the posts. It was about reclaiming my voice, my truth. As I drove home from Cynthia's office, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Stephen's letter, Mom's admission, Cynthia's victory. They were pieces of a puzzle I'd been trying to solve for months. I had spent so long fighting to be seen, to prove I wasn't the villain Stephen made me out to be. But now, with Mom's promise to change and the rumors finally gone, I could breathe again. Cutting Stephen out of my life wasn't about revenge. It was about choosing myself, about protecting the peace I'd fought so hard to build. I thought of Dad's quiet apology at the exhibition, Diane's kind words, and Carol's unwavering support. They were my family now, the ones who showed up when it mattered. Stephen's absence left a hole, but it was one I could live with. For the first time, I felt free, not just from his shadow, but from the need to prove that I was enough. By summer, I finally understood what family truly meant. Dad and I had found our way back to each other, our bond stronger after the exhibition. We spent weekends together, sipping coffee and sharing old stories, his laughter filling the gaps left by months of silence. He tried to bridge the divide with Stephen, once suggesting a family meeting, but I stood firm. "Dad," I said softly, "I'm done with him." Stephen's letter, a half-hearted apology, hadn't changed anything. His jealousy had torn us apart, and I wasn't opening that door again. I'd also stepped back from Mom. Despite her promise to do better, the years she'd spent favoring Stephen had left scars too deep for quick healing. I needed time and distance before I could let her all the way back in. Word eventually reached me that Stephen had left Cleveland, moving somewhere out west. His reputation had crumbled. Friends drifted away after Diane ended things, and coworkers whispered about his arrogance and temper. The life he'd built on charm and bravado was gone. His actions had finally caught up with him. I didn't feel triumph, only quiet relief. His absence meant I could finally live without looking over my shoulder, without waiting for the next jab or lie to unravel my peace. Then one afternoon, Cynthia called with an update. "Stephen's under a legal microscope." Now, she said, her tone sharp but calm. She'd secured a formal agreement ensuring he couldn't spread more rumors or drag my name through the mud again. "If he tries anything, we've got him." She added her confidence, steadying me. Cynthia's work had been a shield when I felt most exposed. Knowing Stephen's lies were now legally silenced gave me a sense of closure I hadn't realized I still needed. I thanked her, though words didn't feel enough for what she'd done. Looking back, I finally understood the truth about family. It isn't about blood or shared history. It's about respect. It's about the people who lift you up instead of tearing you down. Dad, Carol, Diane, even Cynthia. They showed me what real loyalty looks like, standing by me when it mattered most. Stephen's selfishness had cost him everything: his fiancée, his family, his place in our lives. His story was a warning that cruelty isolates and that every choice has consequences. I've learned to choose carefully who I let in to guard my heart without hardening it. My life is fuller now, not because of who I cut out, but because of who I chose to keep close. Thank you for listening to my story. Now tell me, what would you have done in my shoes?